my top 4 defenses to stream for week 5. As I was mentioning, clear-cut number 1 for me at the top. I'm going to spend a few more minutes on these guys than the others because they're out there in all your leagues. I would highly, highly recommend every single one you look for the Jacksonville Jags. They're 5th right now in points among fantasy defenses, averaging over 11 points per game. Yes, that's buoyed by a huge week 2 against the Colts where they had 5 sacks, 3 interceptions, a shutout. Like, they were beasts. But guess what? I think this defense is genuinely good right now. They have the most interceptions in the league at 7. They are had at least 3 sacks in 3 of their 4 games, 4 interceptions across their last 2 games. And the Houston team has allowed exactly that about too. Jags are 7-point home favorites. They're projected to hold this team under 20 points right now. And they've been the classic, like, bend, don't break. 14th in yards allowed, not great, middle of the pack, but 4th in the league in terms of points allowed. Again, very opportunistic, good at not giving up the big plays or the big points, despite letting teams move the ball okay on them. They've been very, very solid at holding them out of the end zone. 6th fewest rushing yards allowed. That's the one thing the Texans do well. So the Jags D has been swarming running back so far this year. I guess Miles Sanders had something to say about that last week. But nonetheless, I do think this is the perfect, like, the way they match up against the Texans. Everybody matches up well against that pathetic, paltry, winless offense. I think the Jags are going to have a nice, get week 2 blow up like they had. Not out of the question against an even worse Texans team this week. By far and away, my number 1 defensive streamer of the week, the Jacksonville Jags. Now, if you miss out on them, I don't hate the Dolphins at all this week. They get Zach Wilson. Remember, Zach Wilson-led Jets allowed the 7th most points to defenses last year, and he picked up right where he left off with 2 horrendous interceptions, a fumble as well. I think it's just going to be right back to where we started with Zach Wilson. He did look better. He looked more competent, led that game-winning drive against the Steelers. I won't take that away from him, but we saw plenty of the boneheadedness that makes him a great team to target for your defenses. Now, the Miami Dolphins have not been all that great the last few weeks, but let's look at that. Miami faced Baltimore, Buffalo, Cincinnati. Even with those matchups, they're still coming out at the 13th most points in points per game for defenses. They had that 18-point beautiful effort against New England. I think this team for the Jets is even worse, even more turnover than that Pats team. So I really like them to get picked off at least once, maybe twice, and maybe even a pick 6 here for your Dolphins. So big, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And the fact that they've been bludgeoned by a few really good offensive opponents these last few weeks is people down on the Dolphins as a very viable stream. I like the Vikings. They've got 6 fantasy points or more in every single game. This is the classic. Like, this team's not going to lose you the week. They're not going to even get – they get above 6 every week. So you know you can bank on like a nice 6-7, but they're facing the Bears. And good Lord, this team is horrendous. 31st in total offense at under 270 yards per game, 97.5 passing yards per game, under 100. That is just abysmal. No team in the NFC has fewer points per game, 16 for Justin Fields points per game right now. And they've also given up the 2nd most sacks in the league, 8th most points to defenses. We saw the Giants put up 16 points against them last week. The Giants aren't anything special on defense. Neither are the Vikes, but they don't need to be to have a 12 to 15 fantasy point day against this awful, awful Bears team. And last and probably not least is the Titans, 9% rostered right now. It's become the Carson Wentz we all know and hate. He is just abysmal. The Commanders have combined for 16 points across their last 2 weeks as Wentz has doo-doo dribbling down his legs the entire time. This Tennessee Titans defense, not great, but okay, 10 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions. That's not horrible. And Mike Vrabel defenses are always pretty solid. So I like this defense a bit more than your typical ones. And again, this is just an absolutely abysmal Commanders team these last few weeks. They've been getting bludgeoned, turnovers, sacks. I mean, every time you turn on a Commanders game, Wentz's rushers in his face and he's going to the ground, and it always looks terrible. So I really like this team. Commanders, 4th most points allowed to team defenses. Titans, not a great defense, but somebody that can definitely capitalize on the ineptitude of Carson Wentz and this Commanders team. So those are my favorite ones. But again, I do want to reemphasize before I get to your questions, definitely the Jags, my top defensive streamer of the week by a long, long mile ahead of these other ones. So go get those Jags this week. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.